So I made the mistake yesterday, Ave. I forgot my bag, and so I shot down to Lincoln real quick, and where everybody was trying to put out a 3 alarm fire, wondering why I just wanted a shaving kit. Um, I poked my head over in the indoor complex because I wanted to say hi to a couple of guys, and
Yeah.
like 10:50, and they're already getting ready for the presser.
Hmm.
So I went back to the studio. And Coach Rhule was getting ready to do the coaches show with a couple of folks, and I'm like, you could just tell by his tenor this was going to be a pretty
Yeah.
informative press conference. Was that kind of your takeaway where he made sure he covered all his bases for all
Mhm.
the talking points for us media folks this week?
Yeah, I think he actually does a pretty good job about that. I mean, you look at last year too. There'd be losses, and Keith would say, "Hey, okay, one more, two more," and he's like, "No, no, I got time. I'll answer them." I know people are curious, and I think he does that for a couple of reasons. One, I think his transparency is something that a lot of people appreciate about him, because I think he is willing to share what's truly going on. Because if not, I think he knows the direction that it also goes if he's short and he doesn't offer a good amount of information. And so I think he would rather be the one to be straight up and upfront with people and let them know, hey, this is where we're at. This is really what I'm saying in meetings. This is really what I'm hearing from players. So when the stories are written or the people, the fans are communicating, they know what's actually going on versus making, whatever assumption they want to, whether that's going to happen or not. But I think Rhule doesn't mind sharing where they're truly at. And so yesterday, I think he answered a lot of those questions. And I think a lot of them, I think you guys said it earlier, I think a lot of them are really important. Because in full transparency, like my job as a reporter, I'm not supposed to go tell everyone how Nebraska football should play football. That's not the responsibility. It's not the role that I have. But
Mm-hmm.
when Coach Rhule is able to tell us certain things, I'm the vessel of curiosity, right? So I texted you in the middle of the game at one point, hey, what's breaking down on some of these explosive plays? I'm not sitting up there in a press box looking at it live, real time, knowing what's going on.
Yeah.
And for you to sit there and explain it to me in a few steps allowed me to watch the game a tad bit differently. And I think that's something that Coach Rhule does really well, is he offers a few things that allows us to think a little bit differently. So when we are watching the game or we go back and watch it, we're analyzing maybe a little bit more critically, because we're not the ones sitting here being like, well, Nebraska should be doing this, this, and this. I'm not in that film room with them. So it's interesting when he does give us that kind of information. So I can go back and watch now the plays today and be like, okay, I understand why that broke down. So from a reporter standpoint and being, like I said, the vessel of curiosity for a fan base, I do appreciate when he is transparent in that way.
Man, that might need to be a T-shirt. Best of curiosity. You know what's funny? Because you said it, and I'm super authentic. I'll tell you where I'm bad and where I'm good, and I get it. Some of the guys, oh, he's a savant, or Kyle, he watches games differently. That's it's not the savant part. I am a thinker, but do you know what really allows you to like ask me a question real time and I can think about it and give you an answer? I know I'm being listened to real time, so it keeps me in check.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm just at my house or I'm in front of my own TV with a clicker, I may not give you the same answer real time. But because
You know what
I
your job is in that
I
moment.
know what my job is in the moment, it helps corral my thoughts. Like
Mm-hmm.
so like I'm benefiting from not being able to just go crazy like I maybe would want to. It forces me to kind of sit back and be
It's
analytical.
almost like if you're playing a football game and you have people around you that you're responsible to, that you need to stay locked in and do your job.
Sure.
I think there's a corollary there.
There
I
is.
just mean your skill set from playing maybe translates a little bit to the booth.
That
You
is
can take that for what you will if you want.
wow, what is wrong with you?
I don't know. It's Averie's fault.
Avery, this
No.
he's been
No.
on one
So
all morning.
yesterday, as soon as the show was over yesterday, she gets me all gassed up about some stuff on the internet. And then last night, when I'm about to choose violence, she's
I
like,
calmed you
Ravi,
down. I
she
calmed you
did. She's
down.
like, Ravi, don't do it. She's like, give it 24 hours. Think on it.
So was it about like am I privy? Like
It's the same thing I sent you
oh
in the group
I
chat.
said,
yeah.
I said, don't stoop down to that level. I said, take a deep breath.
She's like, give it 24 hours.
So
I got to be honest, in 24 hours, I still might send it.
No, you
So-
won't.
so Ave,
Yes.
did the press conference yesterday and rewatching the game, do you have more questions or answers?
It's a good question. Well, one, the reason why I bring up the things that I was texting you about in the game, it was interesting to hear Coach Rhule be really transparent yesterday and say, "Hey, like we need to look at is it schematics or is it just maybe not having players in the right position?" Because I think who was the run in the third quarter that made it the 27?
Harmon.
Yeah, that run I think it was is when
No,
I
it's Marshall.
Marshall.
It's Marshall.
whatever that one was, that whatever run it was, that's when I texted you.
Yep.
And then when I went back and watched it after listening to Coach Rhule speak, there were a few rushers that Nebraska had in the secondary that looked like they were about to go smoke him. And then because of your text, I was able to watch that and say, oh, it's because they were blocking at a second and third level where I think Watson Trent looks like he runs into a brick wall. And that's why he can't.
I like Buddha's got to fit that better.
Right.
Watson Trent's a little slow. Guthrie's playing man. I'm sending you the picture that I sent.
Yeah, you sent me this
that
yesterday.
I sent Ravi. It's like I want to tweet these things out like real time. I just don't know if that does anybody any good because I don't know. I always worry, Ave, if we can handle the information that comes with being inquisitive. So that's why I like when you said you're kind of the vessel because it's not your responsibility to like control the feelings after people get the answer they're asking. It's you just want to have the answer, the questions that people are asking. Sometimes I get a little scared that, well, I'll tell them what I think is happening, but I still have to pit it against how they feel about it originally. Like I know it's going to be perceived through whatever prism that their vantage point is.
Yeah, and I think you can't control that. And I think that's the big thing too when I say that is I have such a huge privilege, we all do obviously, of sitting front row to hearing Coach Rhule speak and these players speak and just the tunnels I get to stand in and watching the conversations between players and things of that nature. So that allows me, I think, probably to have a more informed perspective on when I'm watching things or just how players react to certain things. But I think I find it fascinating when I do get to ask you because it allows me to, like I said earlier, watch things a little bit differently. And then when I mix it with what I've heard from Coach Rhule, the players speak about other players or whatever it is, okay, that lines up. That makes sense. So for a lot of it, for me, it's a kind of the connecting of the dots. And sometimes I wish I would challenge whether it's fans or whether it's not even local fans. It's, the conversation we heard yesterday with Coach Rhule and the whole Dylan thing, like just challenging ourselves to be a tad bit more curious or inquisitive to go figure it out before we just blame it on X, Y, and Z, because I think that's where you're coming from, Damon, too. You can tell them what you want to, what you're saying, but the easy answer is X or the easy answer is Y. So that's once again, also why I really appreciate how transparent Coach Rhule is, because I mean, he's watching the game from an eye level. He's not seeing it from an all 22 right after the game. He's seeing it from essentially some of our perspective too. So he doesn't have all the answers immediately. And I don't think I would want to hear from a head coach right after the game who comes in and says it was blah, 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 and blah, 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 because does he really know? I would, as a player, I would hope, I mean, unless they're looking at the iPad or they have time at halftime, but if I had a head coach who's telling me immediately they know it's X, Y, and Z without really looking at it, I don't know how honest that is either.
Yeah, I would have to imagine if that were the case, it would have to be something probably not technical, like not scheme related. That is something that they had already thought was going to be a problem from practice that just showed up and they're like, oh yeah, that was a problem.
And I also think that's kind of, I mean, take it what a positive and a negative. When Coach Rhule told us last week the three things that he was a tad bit nervous about, they still showed up in the game on Saturday. Kicking game was better. Yeah. But I think it's a positive that it's not necessarily a Michigan thing. It's something that Nebraska has ownership of, that they can go to practice and say, okay, we've been challenged now by four different opponents, to Power 4, to not Power 4, and it's still our issue. How are we going to fix it? Or the negative is that they still haven't been able to truly tweak it to where they want to be. But I think it was interesting to hear Coach Rhule say, hey, red zone and some of the tackling in space or big explosive plays, running game, are still an issue. And I think now Nebraska has an opportunity with a bye week to be like, this is not going to show up again in week 5.
So it was last week or whenever we called him and he said, yeah, he was given the stats on the inside the 5 and it was only at 66%. Said, oh, that's horrific. But it doesn't mean we need to have a talk show about it. Like, 100%. Do we? And I kind of chuckled and I was like, oh shoot, is that for us? Like, whatever. So you remove it. And then yesterday he says, hey, there's some things that I've got to look at. And I have to be careful as a a head coach when I say this.
Mhm.
Are you appreciative of that? Do you want to just see him like let it, and he is kind of letting it rip, but do you want him to take a definite, what does leadership look like to you when he's answering questions and he's trying to process through the greater good, knowing good and well at the end of the day, he's going to be critiqued regardless. He
Yeah,
still takes the greater good stance.
for sure. I mean, we heard this last year where we started to realize that he wasn't really just speaking to the media and the fans. Like he's speaking to everyone within his building. And so I think that's also why he's pretty careful about how he says things, because this is a coaching staff that rarely likes to single out players unless it's something that they're really willing to highlight. And Coach Rhule, I think, probably is the one that sets that standard there and how they speak about their players. But I think he knows how often his players are probably listening or how often his staff is listening. And I think he wants to make sure it's interpreted the right way, especially if players do come up, or even yesterday when they talked about the second running back position. I don't think he wants that to be taken out of context if his players are listening to it. Because I think at the end of the day, how he speaks as a leader, yeah, it does trickle down because their players or the families of players are going to be listening to it. It's not always just us. And so I think that's why he's also careful about what he says. Because if he goes up there and says things carelessly, how does that affect if the players are listening? And I think there's been a lot of times where he says, I want my players to hear this, or I want my players to understand. So I think he's not always speaking directly to us. And he wants his players to know, hey, when I'm speaking not to you and about you, to other people, this is how I speak about you.
How did it land with you when he said, hey, I have to be careful how I say this as a head coach, but I asked her staff when he's in reference to the number 2 running back and how that was going to go down? Like, what was your takeaway from how he kind of answered that question?
Honestly, I really liked it. And I knew immediately people were going to be, oh my gosh, we don't even know. They don't know, blah, blah, blah. I liked it because the part where he said, that's not always on the players and them getting more production. That comes on us too, because we have to find ways to better get production out of
He
guys.
quietly put it on the staff with, and right, he gave them some skin in the game. Like, okay, whatever you tell me, you better make happen.
Yeah. And I also just
That's kind of how I took it.
And I think if you want an honest head coach or an honest coaching staff, like me and you have talked about this, they weren't going to get better from what they had done in the preseason. And I think they needed a game like Michigan to figure out truly where they're at. And I think, a loss exposes you. You can't hide. And I think that was a huge area. I mean, you look at their total rushing yards, it was 43 yards. Like, I think that's a moment where it's okay. It worked in the first few weeks, but now we really need to figure this out. And I think why not have an honest conversation when this is the point in their season that these hard questions need to be asked. And I don't know. There's a lot of panic because everyone wants to say the head coach doesn't even know X, Y, and Z. But that's kind of the point of having these ups and downs of a season, is to try and figure things out, obviously. So I didn't have an issue with it. And I mean, maybe it's the, I don't know, athlete part of me who knows what it's like to be on a roster where you're moving things around, you're changing certain formations, and certain players get different roles. And now they're being like, hey, if we're going to go this direction, we need to add more of a role to this person. I don't think it's end all be all that he said that. And if that's the conversations they're having, like, wow, how maybe it's a privilege that we're understanding what conversations are happening directly in the coaches meeting. When's the last time? I don't know the last time media has heard that. So there's that level of transparency that he's sharing. But two, I just appreciate that he was like, it's not always a player's thing, but we have to be better too about getting the best out of our players. And I know that's really important to him.
What are you kind of hearing in your circles? And we'll get you out on this. I apologize if I cut Ravi off, but you heard him reference, like Carter Nelson or the number 2 backs, or we'll see what happens at inside linebacker in terms of that growth and development, the health of the secondary. What are you looking forward to understanding during the bye week as it relates to Michigan State?
It's a good question. I think something he said earlier in the press conference kind of is where my mind immediately goes. And it was the question about Elijah Pritchett a little bit, and just talking about, every player that plays for us, whether it's a transfer or a guy that's already playing for us, like, we care about him more than just the name on that jersey. And so I think when you take part of that conversation mixed with challenging the staff to get more out of their players, or what do these certain positions look like, whether it's left tackle or, like you said, the inside linebacker position or running back, how can we have more of a dialed in focus on some of these things now that we've truly been challenged. Yes, we were able to get through it in the first 3 weeks. And I feel like we're learning a lot about our guys. But this is what Coach Rhule said too yesterday. Like this is when they're going to learn the most. Like which guys are going to step up in the next week and a half when they've hit their first wall of adversity, that they know, okay, these are our true guys. These are the guys that are responding. And so I think there's that aspect of it too. Like how are the guys responding in practice? I think will tell them a lot as well. Because for a lot of these guys, whether they are a transfer, they haven't been through adversity with Nebraska yet, or if they've been on this team previously, they've faced adversity. Are they facing it differently? Are they standing up as a leader? Something like, not to spin off real quickly, but something that I found really interesting was the dialogue at the end of this game being about which direction this team's going to go. For some reason, that really surprised me. I did not expect, I didn't even think that was going to be a question. I don't mean question from like media. I just mean in general. Like, I feel like if we've learned anything about the demeanor of this team, I don't feel like direction of the season. It was surprising to me. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the conversations we've had preseason, whether it was the Dylan interview or just watching the way this team interacts with one another. For some reason, that just surprised me. I don't feel like this team was going to take this loss and be like, well, so be it. Here we go. We got X amount of games in front of us. We're just going to coast this one out. So I think that those positions will be dictated by the way this team responds. And I'm not questioning this team's response. I think this is a really close team. One that, Damon, you've even said, I feel like is closer than we've seen in a while. Yeah. But it'll be interesting based on that response, how those certain specific position groups, do we see different faces? Or is it the guys that had a tough week step up bigger than we expect?
As a very wise man once said, you can't go 10-2 without losing 2. So
lemon meringue pie in the sky.
That's Avarie Howard. Our Hurrdat Sports friend Avarie. Great
you
stuff.
Seem like a big lemon meringue guy.
Nah. Listen, I'm, I know not everybody knows this. I'm an American. I like apple pie.
Wow.
I was born in Omaha. You know that, DB?
Yeah.
Avarie, we appreciate. What's that?
I said we know.
Yeah. This is just too
much. What high school did you go to?
Big Omaha guy. Oh, Miller North. Let me tell you about. Never mind. We'll get to that later. Another day. Maybe during basketball season. We're a basketball school now. I don't know if you know that. Avarie, we appreciate the time as always. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Abe.